big news that we have to talk about before we can get into our show here. Mississippi State head coach Chris Lemonis was fired in his 7th season at Mississippi State. The Bulldogs were 7-14 in conference play, a better record overall, but the reality was that their conference record was likely going to be a limiting factor in their ability to get to the postseason. And if they missed, it would have marked the 3rd time in the last 4 years that Mississippi State failed to reach the postseason, which is quite the contrast from where it was when it won a national championship not too long ago in 2022 under Chris Lemonis. So a surprising firing, to say the least, at this point in the season. You would think from a respect standpoint that a guy like Chris Lemonis would have earned the opportunity to be able to stay in his position at least through the end of the season. But the reality is that's not really the college world that we live in right now. At the moment, being prepared for the portal and to be able to crank out a roster that's going to be competitive, especially in a conference like the SEC, requires advanced planning. And in this case, for a coach to be in play by the time those considerations need to be made. So a really interesting dynamic overall in terms of the decision and what it's going to look like moving forward. Do they make a splash now? Do they go and they spend, or are they limited in terms of the ability to spend on their next head coach due to the upcoming House settlement? A lot of unanswered questions, but I guess my first one for you would be, what was your reaction to all of this? Mine was surprise. I'm curious where you stand.
Yeah, I was right there with you. I was surprised as well that they did it mid-season. I know that this was trending towards being the 3rd year in the last 4 where they didn't make the postseason. But I mean, he brought the program its first ever national championship in 21. They made a regional final last year. They were off to a slow start this year, but they were still kind of in that vague / tough to be in area of like fighting for that magic number of 12 SEC wins to get into the postseason. So I didn't think all was totally lost this year for Mississippi State. Like, we personally wouldn't have had them in the field of 64 this week and then probably going forward, barring something changing. But I was pretty surprised that they did it mid-season and not afterwards, just kind of seeing how the rest of this whole thing played out. So I share in your sentiment of being surprised, and not to jump the gun on any further questions, but on your point of, where are they going to go hiring wise, I have a feeling that they'll probably go after a big name and try and make as big a splash as possible.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And for those of you who are interested on what it is that I'm thinking and hearing in terms of Mississippi State's hiring process, we already do have a coaching hotboard up over at baseballamerica.com. You can see all of our college content at baseballamerica.com/college. One of the things that I think is really important to point out on that list, there are only 2 assistant coaches that we list. The reality, though, Peter, is that everything I'm being told from my sources around that situation and nationally is that it is so highly unlikely that they are going to make an assistant hire. This is trending towards being a big name coach, probably somebody from the ACC or SEC ranks, somebody who's done it and been there for a long time. There is a chance that they do try to save money. And like we mentioned on the list, somebody like Dan Fitzgerald at Kansas, who's done a lot of winning this season and has gotten good fast at a place where it's very hard to succeed, could be an option if they need to be able to go with a superstar hire, or they can't go with a non-superstar hire. But I do think that that's who we're talking about here. And we mentioned some guys in that hot list, in the hot board, who are established power coaches, some of whom have even been to Omaha with their programs in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good list. And again, I think that, while they could go the money saving route, I think they're going to do everything in their power to go after really big fish. I mean, it's a coveted job in and of itself and a desirable one at that. But I mean, I'd be a little bit surprised, not as surprised as the midseason firing of Coach Lemonis, but I'd be a little bit surprised if it wasn't a household name at this point, just based on what you've been hearing. And then just kind of the way that this is trending early on. They're going to go after some legit coaches.
One thing that I think is important for us to address is the timing of the firing. And I know that I mentioned it when I breached the topic here, but the reality is that I have a really hard time deciding where to stand when it comes to how to feel about this move. The timing is obviously weird. And if you look historically, college baseball coaches are very rarely fired during the season. This is typically a sport that lets its coaches coach through the year and then make the change after the season is over. There are certainly exceptions to this. But again, for the most part, that is the process, where it had been. I personally think that as socially challenging as this move might be, as much of a PR nightmare you might want to call it that, I think it's the right move. We're in an era of college sports, like I said a couple minutes ago, that is so fast paced and demanding that you need to be able to have your people in place by the time that it counts. And in this sport, that's when the portal opens. And the reality is if you let anybody coach through the end of the season who you're already planning on firing, you are likely doing a disservice to your program. You need these guys to be able to recruit. A new staff is going to have a new identity. Not only are they going to have to try and bring back the players who they're trying to inherit, but they have to fill out the roster that they're going to have for the next year. So, for me, yes, I completely understand from a respect standpoint where there are many people coming from. It sounds like yourself included when it comes to, maybe he should have been there throughout the rest of the year. I don't disagree with any of you. What I would tell you, though, is that on the other side of the coin, if you're Mississippi State, you want to get good fast. The expectation there is to win every year. That's why a guy who won a national title in 2021 is no longer the coach of the program 4 years later. It's because of those expectations. And so for me, this is merely a matter of the team doing what it has to do to position itself for success after this transition.
Yeah, I mean, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of this decision and when to make it, because I mean, as you said, like, I'm in the camp of, just from a sheer etiquette and really respect standpoint, it's something you wait on doing until after the season ends. I mean, right now we're basically in May. We've got 2.5, 3 weeks left in the regular season. They're fighting for a bubble spot. Are they going to make the field of 64? Were they going to make the field of 64? Probably not. But like, they were still in it, still fighting. There are some intriguing pieces on that roster. I think even in the portal era, obviously what has been happening in the last handful of years isn't working out, but I think as desirable a destination it is for coaches around the country, it's still a desirable destination for players. I mean, you have Duty Noble Field, which is an outstanding facility, an outstanding yard, and you have some of the best fans in college baseball. You're playing big time SEC baseball weekend in and weekend out. So I think being able to maximize that, maximize the selling point behind it. And like you said, there's no reason why they should not, like, Omaha should be the standard at Mississippi State. And I have a feeling that it is, but this should be like a consistent Omaha contender / Omaha attendee, just given all that it has going for them. So I disagree with the timing. I think probably projecting on it a little bit and how the rest of the season was going to go is probably the right choice. It's hard to say because he's not going to be able to see it through the last 3 weeks, but the writing seemed to have been on the wall. And we even said it coming into this year, like in the preseason, like this was a big year for both Mississippi schools. Like, Ole Miss has risen to the occasion. They're in the hosting line. They're in a really good spot. They seem to have righted the ship, needed to do it in a big way. Mississippi State, not so much. And we'd kind of figured it was going to happen with one of them if they didn't right the ship. So it stinks, but it'll make for a really interesting coaching search.
No, well, that for sure. I mean, I think that we're talking about the kind of hiring that it's going to send a ripple effect across the SEC in the same way that it did when Texas hired Jim Schlossnagle away from Texas A&M. We saw the ripple effect that caused, or it could have caused, until Texas A&M decided to go in-house with Michael Early. This will not be that case, most likely. We put, on our hot board that there's a chance that they stay in-house, potentially with a miraculous end of season here. But again, the reality is that this is a splash hire type job that expects to be good every year, that expects to be in Omaha. And so the expectation is that they are going to pluck potentially from a school within the conference, and if not, then from another powerhouse elsewhere. But this is a big job, and a big fish will ultimately get it.